Can you dig it? With a Bobcat compact excavator, you can. Up to $6,000 in rebates on select models and 0% financing for 36 months.
Check us out at Bobcat of Charleston in North Charleston.
Hello, folks, and welcome to episode 62 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. We are recording on Sunday, November 20th, and we had a big week of basketball, 3 games to recap. We will also recap touch a little bit on recruiting, and also recap a little bit about that football game that happened on Saturday. But first, let me bring in my partner, Scott. You already heard him, Jason Evans in Atlanta. What's up, man?
Do we really have to talk about that football game?
we're gonna get into it. We're gonna have
the good or the bad. We are with you. The good or the bad football team.
Exactly. And over in Denver, or are you in Denver, Sam Klein?
I'm actually up in the high country in Breckenridge, Colorado this week, and I would like to admit up front that I didn't get to see the football game. I was at a live recording of a Prairie Home Companion on Saturday afternoon, and I have no regrets.
You're lucky.
Yeah, that you probably did a lot better than we did, but we'll get into that in a little bit. First off, like I said, it was a big week for Duke basketball. We had 3 games. We're going to unpack the first one first, and then we'll get into the Basketball Hall of Fame tip-off after that. First off, on Tuesday, Duke basketball went up to Madison Square Garden for the Champions Classic, and in a heartbreaker with about, 3 seconds left, lost to Kansas 77-75 on a Frank Mason III jumper. I'll start with you, Jason. Give me your thoughts on that game and what you saw and what happened.
Well, I thought it was a frustrating game early on because, and tell me if you guys disagree, I had this sense in the first 7 to 10 minutes that Duke really had a chance to run away and hide a little bit, and we didn't. Kansas got into foul trouble very quickly, very early on. Kansas seemed to be struggling to figure out what the heck they were doing early on in the game. And I really thought, hey, this is our chance. If we can come out and get hot, if we can, hit some shots and the such and stretch things out, Kansas may start to panic a little bit, and maybe they'll bring some of the guys in foul trouble back a little bit early because they're so desperate, and those guys will get in even more foul trouble. And I had these visions of grandeur in my head, and it did. We went into halftime with a 34-29 lead. It didn't feel to me like we had a safe 5 points isn't safe, but I was sure Kansas was going to come out and play much better in the second half. They absolutely did. The difference in the game to me was that there was about a 3-minute stretch, sort of, not midway through, almost midway through that second half, when Josh Jackson, who everyone says has a real chance to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft, showed why he has a chance to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. He scored like 7 or 9 points all by himself, and they were the kind of points where you just went, yeah, that's an NBA move. That's, he's more athletic. He's better than anyone else on the floor at this moment. And we were struggling to score at that moment, and he took it from what had been a back-and-forth game or a really tight game to one where they had an extended lead. And once that happened, it was just tough for Duke to come back. We shot okay in this game, but it never felt like we were getting easy shots. It felt like we had way too many turnovers. We did have a great comeback late in the game, and I love the guts that it took for Frank Jackson to rise up and take that 3-pointer that tied the game, and it was incredibly exciting. But Frank Mason III, there's a reason he's in the running for Player of the Year. In fact, as of that game, Frank Mason III may be the front runner for Player of the Year right now nationally. He is a great, great, great guard. By the way, did you guys hear what Bill Self, when he called that last play, Frank Mason, of course, hit the game-winning shot. Bill Self called that last play. What he said to the guys in the huddle was, he said, "Hey, guys, get the ball to Frank and get out of his way." Good play. It worked.
He had the Michael Jordan ability, right? It's like, he's just going to take the last shot, and you guys all need to recognize that, so don't bother him.
Yeah. When we were previewing this game, I talked about rebounding, and I talked about the boards being really important for us because Kansas lost to Indiana and got killed on the on rebounding. And I thought that was a place where we could maybe exploit them a little bit, because I didn't think we would be able to beat them in the backcourt, because Mason and Devontae Graham and Josh, I'm blanking on his name now, the dude I was just talking about a second ago, Josh Jackson. God, I knew we were not going to be better than the three of them. Can I speak? I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. So I thought rebounding was going to be a place that would work for us, and it didn't. And that may have been the story of the game. We were out-rebounded by 9. They had 14 offensive rebounds, which is a lot. And they needed it, because they were terrible from 3, and they were terrible at the free throw line. They were great from 2. Everything they shot inside the arc they made. But that was the difference in the game, and it was frustrating. It really felt like a game that if Duke had played just a little bit better, we could have won. Grayson Allen, got hurt and clearly was not himself, and wasn't himself all week long. But I've talked enough about this one. Sam, what you got?
So, well, on the rebounding margin, you talked about the rebounding margin. You talked about Josh Jackson, and one of the interesting things here is that Josh Jackson only played 18 minutes of this game. He got in foul trouble. I think it was in the first half, right? And then he eventually fouled out. So if you had told me, hey, Josh Jackson's only going to play 18 minutes, that probably makes it sound like Duke's going to win the game, because Josh Jackson, he's not their best player. I think Frank Mason's their best player. But Josh Jackson is going to be key for Kansas this year. That being said, in the 18 minutes that he played, he took 9 shots and scored 15 points. So he was highly efficient. And for a lot of the time that he missed, we got to see their freshman center from Nigeria, Azubuike, I think is how you say his name. And he pulled down 12 boards against us after only pulling down 2 rebounds against Indiana. So that was kind of out of nowhere against us.
He had 12 rebounds in 15 minutes. 12 rebounds in 15 minutes.
In 15 minutes, and that provided, I think it's more than the entire rebounding margin was their freshman center, who I don't think we game planned for at all. He just came in and cleaned up the boards. I will say that I was impressed in that I think that you mentioned Frank Jackson and him making the shot towards the end. It could have been in the highlight reel for this year, if not for Frank Mason coming back and winning the game for them at the end. I've been really impressed so far with Frank Jackson's poise and the way that he's been able to play with this team. I think sometimes we take for granted that these star freshmen are just going to come in and play well immediately, but it doesn't always happen. And I think that Jackson really seems like he's part of that rotation, and there's not much lost when he comes into the game. So that's been really good. I would say that elsewhere in this game, I thought that Jason, you mentioned that the game was kind of weird. I thought the flow in this game was all wrong. Even though it ended up being a perfectly normal scoring game, and Duke's substitution patterns were pretty standard, like a late season Duke against quality opponent. We only really played 6 guys, and they were sort of subbing out normally. But there was just something strange about this game that never felt right, even when Duke was winning. The comeback towards the end felt good, and it was good to see that the team do that, especially in light of the fact that they didn't have depth available. And I'm starting to get really upset every time they flash the camera at the guys in suits or in warm-ups on the bench who are all McDonald's All-Americans who can't play. But I think ultimately, if this is the result, if Duke is going to be losing on basically a buzzer beater to one of the other very best teams in the country, but Duke doesn't have 3 of their best players, and the one key advantage that we would have over Kansas, the rebounding, is basically not available if you take all those guys out. I think that makes us feel good about going forward, hopefully, once all those guys are back in the fold for this team. So it hurts to lose, but I think you see that the team has the talent to overcome probably any opponent, and hopefully that shows up when everyone's healthy.
And not just that we were missing our 3 best players. Not just that we were missing those 3 players, but our best player, Grayson Allen, was clearly hobbled. Grayson was not himself in this game all week.
I agree with everything you guys. Go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe we want to tangent to Grayson Allen here if we want to do it later. But it seems like, I said that I think that Frank Jackson has felt like he sort of, he's integrated, and it seems like he kind of gets his role on this team. do you feel like so far in this season that Grayson Allen's kind of been forcing the issue on a shooting and just the way that he plays offense? It feels, and maybe you guys disagree with me, but it feels like he might be pressing. He might be trying too hard to live up to being, an All-American preseason player of the year, all that kind of stuff.
I don't get that sense. I don't get that vibe yet. What I do get, as we've been touching on a little bit, when he did get hurt, I feel like he may have come back a little too soon. Like I feel like he's pressing through whatever injury this is, and just that, even this weekend, it was kind of that he was struggling for his game, but he was pushing because I guess in his mind, like if he's down, then we're down 4 players, and he doesn't want to put that burden on his team. I think he wants to put all the burden on himself. So I think that is kind of what I'm seeing, but it's not. I don't get the sense of the pressure of the preseason player of the year accolades getting to him. I think it's more
maybe it's not
the nagging
maybe it's not
injury part.
Yeah, and I should have said I don't really think it's the pressure. I think that might be contributing to it. But just it may also just be that he knows that more of the scoring is on his back when those freshmen are out. That he feels like he's got a lot. He's got to do a lot, even though Luke Kennard has seemed to be a really great scorer so far this year.
Coach K said in the post-game news conference today, and I know we haven't gotten to the Penn State and the Rhode Island games yet, but we're jumping all over the place. What the hell? He said that Grayson Allen was only 50% of what he could be, 50% of his normal self after he got hurt against Kansas. My bet would be that he was like 30% of his normal self for the rest of that Kansas game, and he's slowly getting back up to being 50% of his normal self. But by the way, and we're not previewing games yet, but just put this bug in your ear. Just think about this. I won't be even remotely surprised if Grayson Allen sits or plays very, very, very limited minutes against William & Mary and Appalachian State, our next 2 opponents, to give himself a chance to really heal and get better and get these nagging injuries, these nagging early season injuries past himself, both hurting his leg against Kansas, and then he got like a turf toe kind of thing. He sort of stubbed his toe against Penn State. So I think we may not see much of Grayson Allen for the next week, and I'm fine with that. We will be short-staffed, but I'm fine with that. These guys need to get better. These guys need to get better because this Duke team can be freaking scary good.
I mean, they hung, as we said, they played 6 guys against Kansas, and 3 of the guys that should have been playing in this game are all McDonald's All-Americans, and it was pretty much a back-and-forth game. I mean, Duke went up early, and then Kansas went up late, but it was basically toe-for-toe for 40 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess to wrap up the Kansas portion of it, I agree with you guys when you say that the flow of the game didn't really feel right. Like there's a lot of fouls being called on both sides, like just a lot of fouls, a lot of people in foul trouble, and I don't think that the flow of the game was ever fluid enough because a lot of these players were playing with that foul trouble in mind. So I think that was an issue, but also I think that the pressure's off. There's part of it in the sense of we lost to a really great team in Kansas. We didn't have all our players. I think that game was ours if we're at full strength. But the fact that we ended up just 2 points short on a buzzer beater, if that's what's going to take to beat us, then I think the future this team is still really, really great. I think we have a chance to be an exceptional team, and I don't think now we have to play with the pressure that Kentucky fans were trying to put on their team a couple years ago that ended short, and we ended up winning it all. So I think we can focus on getting everybody back healthy, getting Grayson healthy, and this next week hopefully just working out the kinks. I think the chemistry's there. I think all the tools are there, and there's really not much to work on other than a few nitpicky things. So I'm cool with where we're at right now, especially with that being an early loss against a good team. I'm okay with that.
Hey, let's get to the weekend. The weekend was a lot more fun than earlier in the week.
Yeah, I agree. So let's move forward. We had the Basketball Hall of Fame tip-off at Mohegan Sun Arena in Connecticut. We had 2 games on Saturday and today. Yesterday, we beat Penn State 78-68, and earlier today, we beat Rhode Island 75-65 to win the whole thing. If you recall, the games we had the first couple games of the year against Marist and Grand Canyon technically are part of this tournament that we had in Connecticut. I'll start with you, Sam. Give me your thoughts on the 2 games.
First of all, really impressed with Emil Jefferson this weekend. Seemed like he was in control for both games. And Penn State's not a great opponent. Rhode Island is a very talented team. They've got a lot of leadership, like older guys who produce for them and play most of the game. Terrell, their point guard, and then who's the big guy who made all the block shots, Hassan Martin. Those guys were really good for Rhode Island. Go ahead.
Actually,
sorry,
Garrett is the point guard. Terrell and E.C. Matthews are their 2 wings, and those guys, right. Terrell and Matthews, are really, really good. And Martin had 7 blocks. He had a great game against us. Terrell guy, just really quick, I thought that Terrell guy was fabulous. He looks like a future pro. He's really athletic. Jared Terrell.
I should apologize. I should apologize for labeling him the point guard. I'm used to watching this Duke team that doesn't really have a point guard, so I just assume that if you're the best guard on the team, you're the point guard. So, but yeah, Martin, I think was the real standout with all the blocks. I think they said that he's likely going to end up as the school's all-time block leader, and you can see why. I mean, he gets on top of dudes anytime they're near the paint, and I think he blocked 7 of our shots. But Duke kept Rhode Island.
By the way, really quick, what's unreal about him? Sorry, I'm jumping in so much. Just say something and it makes me think. He's only 6'7". Hassan Martin is only 6'7". He has incredible timing. His timing is so fabulous.
Shot blocking is a skill as much as it relies on the physical. Like you usually have to be pretty big to do it. But some guys just get right, as you said, they get the timing. They're able to control themselves so that they can put the arm out and they can body the shooter up without fouling him. And that was one of the things I found was really impressive about Martin, is that he had a couple blocks where it felt like he was on top of the Duke shooter and he wasn't fouling him, but he was able to crowd the space and what could appear to be an open look from 10, 12 feet, all of a sudden it's not an open look because Martin is just engulfing all of the space available to shoot. So that was really impressive to me. But on the Duke side, like I said, Jefferson was really great. Luke Kennard had an awesome weekend, shot the ball pretty well. Duke kind of struggled against Rhode Island early to score and managed to pull away and sort of keep them at arm's length later in the game. But that URI team, that's the kind of team that you can see in like the second or third round of the tournament. And they've got, as I said, they're an A-Sun, or not A-Sun, they're an A-10 team that has some experienced players that have been there before, and Duke managed again to sort of hold them back. So I was really impressed by that. The Penn State game, I think I have less to say. One of the annoyances of my experience of consuming the Penn State game is that I watched part of it and then I listened to part of it on the radio, but the only radio feed I could access through the internet was the Penn State feed. So I got the Penn State basketball guys, who I think, based on their accents, are Pittsburgh gentlemen, and they might as well have been 2 guys at a bar, like in a Saturday Night Live sketch, being basketball announcers. It was like, oh yeah, look at Grayson Allen, like running down the lane. He looks like he's probably gonna trip somebody. Ho ho ho. So I
I'm sorry, I missed that. I wish I'd listened to that. That sounds awesome.
No, it was awful. It was funny. It was funny to me, like briefly, and after a while, I was like, "Oh no, this is their entire shtick. Like this is nothing like listening to Bob Harris."
I almost want to ask you to speak in that accent for the rest of this podcast.
No, I can't. I can't do the Yinzer accent that well. If I could, I'd be happy to. But yeah, it was like I said, briefly, it was fine. But I think I heard probably real time, probably 20 or 25 minutes of the game. in their voices. And I texted one of my buddies who went to Penn State, and I was like, I don't know if you pay attention to your basketball program or have ever heard these guys, but they are horrible. It's a novelty act. It's not it doesn't, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm not used to hearing that accent very often, but it doesn't sound professional at all to me. Like in my mind, if I'm going to hear basketball on the radio, it has to be sort of that drippy Southern accent. Because that's what Bob Harris has, and that's what I imagine to be the voice of basketball on the radio. So, I think I've gone on long enough. Jason, what did you think about Penn State and Rhode Island?
Well, let me start with Penn State. Donald, can I ask, how horrifying, I'll ask both of you guys, how horrifying was it? So the whole pregame is like, hey, look at these three guys sitting on the bench who are going to be look at these three future lottery picks who are all sitting on the bench, but it's okay. Duke's so deep, they got so many other guys. And then like 5 minutes into the game, Grayson Allen gets hurt and goes to the locker room. And like literally, I'm sorry. Right? Yeah, and then a minute later, Chase Jeter gets hurt in this league. Literally carried to the locker room. I was like, "Oh my God!" Is Brendan Bresser going to be like on the floor by the end of this game? This is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, awful. Jeter went down. He only ended up playing 6 minutes in the game. And he started for some reason. And I guess he started again against.
No, he didn't. He didn't start
today.
Or no, he did he come off the bench? No, he came off the bench.
Yeah.
But I thought it was realistic that we were not going to have Jeter or Allen. There was going to be Jefferson, Kennard, Jones, Delorier, and Jackson. I mean, like, it was like, oh my God.
I mean, it's basically last year's team, right? I mean, you take Ingram out and you replace him with Frank Jackson, and it's basically all the same dudes. So.
No Plumlee in the middle.
Right, and without Plumlee. I think maybe Jeter's able to like Jeter was basically a non-factor last year, right? Maybe he, on his very best day, he could have an average Marshall Plumlee day from last year, but he hasn't come close to that yet this year. So so far Duke is less deep than they were, and as we've said, Delorier is going to end up being a fine player for Duke at some point, but he's not yet this year. So pretty much this year we're running out the same team, minus a little bit, and that's kind of scary.
Yeah. So I mean, the Penn State game to me was a story of Emil Jefferson. He was as close to dominant as you'll ever see him be, I thought. Really, obviously the stats: 16 points, 15 rebounds. Like that's great. That's a big number. He had almost half of Duke. Duke had 38 rebounds. He had 15 of them. That's a huge number. And he had 4 block shots. And I just think he captains our defense. We talked about this last year on the podcast when he went down and we were missing him, throughout the rest of that season, that he's the guy in the back of the defense communicating and telling everyone else what to do. And God, he is so good at that. And Duke is just, it's easy to pay attention to offensive stats and the offensive end of the floor, but shockingly, I'm going to throw out a statistic that will really surprise you. 50% of the game is played at the other end of the floor. 50% of the game is defense. So
do you have a reference for that stat?
I do. It's called the rules of basketball.
Weird. Okay.
That's a good reference.
Yeah. But, I mean, defense is really, really important. And Emil Jefferson makes our defense go. And I thought he was great against Penn State. He was really great against Rhode Island again. He had an incredible weekend. As good a pair of back-to-back games as you'll ever see from him. It was really clear in both games that Grayson Allen wasn't himself. And that's fine. Grayson, like we said, is fighting to do the best he can. Against Penn State, for him to get 8 rebounds, for him to lead the team with 4 assists, when he couldn't do other stuff. Huge props to him. On the weekend, Grayson was 1 for 11 from 3. He's a way better shooter than that. Against Rhode Island, Sam, I like that you described them as the kind of team that you would face in the second, third round of the NCAA. They are a Sweet 16 kind of opponent. Everyone in a Blue Devil uniform not named Luke Kennard was 2 of 16 from 3. We did not shoot well. But somehow, against a team that's a Sweet 16 kind of team, and I think the somehow is because we played really good defense, we had a double-digit lead for basically that entire game. We weren't threatened at all in that game, which is just really shocking. And here are words that you'll never hear me say. Dick Vitale said something really interesting. I can't believe I just said that. Yes.
No, he didn't.
Well, not really interesting. He said something moderately a little tiny bit intelligent. He said the notion, the idea that you're going to add 3 future lottery picks to this current Duke team is terrifying for the rest of college basketball. And he's right. It is, you don't want to sit here and talk about the guys who didn't play too much because we're rolling out there with guys who are playing and they're playing great for us. But oh my God, the notion that you're going to add guys as good as Bolden and Tatum and Giles to this team, there's a reason that everyone says this team's going to win the national title.
I mean, imagine as productive. Well, I was going to say as productive as like Kennard and Allen have been. Imagine if they don't have to worry about getting inside to get rebounds anymore, and they can really, especially on offense, that they can really move around on the perimeter and create for themselves without having to think about those extra steps. Because once like Giles and Bolden are back in there, they don't have to worry about rebounding anymore.
Yeah. So a couple of quick things, and then Donald, I'll get it over to you. But did you guys join me? I loved how confused Rhode Island was when we went zone. I don't know how often we're going to go zone. But we went zone, and Rhode Island was like, I don't know what to do with the ball, and I think they just promptly threw it out of bounds or something like that. Coach K has used this before, and I think we'll see him use it some more in the future as a way, changing up the defense on teams, and they just don't know what the hell to do. And then the last thing is I want to do a quick shout-out to Flying Dutch Devil on the boards, who had a great comment that I want to quote in the Rhode Island postgame thread. He said, and I quote, "If you were to tell me that Duke won 2 games this weekend against very solid competition and Grayson Allen was the 5th leading scorer in each game, I would have laughed in your face." He's right. The notion that we did what we did this weekend with Grayson clearly hurt and not able to score the way he usually scores is a real testament to the rest of the guys on this team. We're playing like seniors. We're playing like experienced players, which is what we're putting out there on the floor. And I love it. And they're really playing great ball. Donald?
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. The first thing I want to comment on, I thought Emil Jefferson had a tremendous weekend. Like Sam said, he kind of was out there playing with the mentality of this is going to be my weekend and everybody get out of my way. And he had 15 boards in both games and 17 and 16 points in the respective games. And he overshadowed what I thought was an incredible weekend by Luke Kennard. An incredible week by Luke Kennard. If you look at the 3 games, he played very, very well. And he got his shots off. He had open looks. He was able to create a couple of looks or salvage a couple of layups and points out of some tricky situations. And I thought he played really well. So I wanted to give him a shout-out, especially because I thought his scoring in the absence of Grayson Allen is really what helped this team be calm. That with Emil Jefferson, Matt Jones, I thought played very well in the second half against Rhode Island. Just as poised. He didn't have to, light up the stat sheet. He had 13 points. He hit a couple of threes. He hit a couple free throws when we needed it. He got a couple rebounds, but he didn't do anything flashy. He was just himself. He played within himself, and I think that is what this team needs going forward. I think these guys now need to just go ahead and say, this is my game. This is how we're going to do it. So when these 3 guys, the 3 freshmen, do make their debut, everyone knows what their role is going to be. And I think that's starting to show a little bit earlier than we had last year when we were kind of figuring out the roles on this team, especially with it being down to 6-7 players at times. Everybody here knows their role, and I think they're doing it well. It's just that we need to get healthy. Grayson, I thought he played the entire weekend, basically banged up, and we need to get him back healthy. Chase Jeter the same way. I'm glad they stuck it out. I think they did well in playing. I mean, Grayson Allen played 39 minutes today after getting hurt the day before. So I heard again the day before. So
That's
I think
crazy.
that
It is
that just shows
crazy.
how tough this kid is. Like everyone talked about last year about how he was a prima donna and like how he was the bad boy of college basketball, but this man takes all the shots from people, and he got back up after being injured the day before on less than 24 hours rest, came back and played 39 minutes. Name a guy in college basketball that's going to do that. Like, that's incredible. You got to give him props for that. Even if the stat sheet doesn't show that he had a good game, I think he had a tremendous game just by being on the court.
Well, and through those first 5 games, he's not quite the leading scorer on the team yet, but he's right there with Kennard and Jackson. And that's, playing through, as you point out, playing through a couple of injuries and not looking like his best. So we haven't seen yet this year the Grayson Allen that we know is hiding just underneath of whatever those injuries are.
Yeah, Allen's only hitting 26% of his three-pointers. And you're correct to point out, Sam, that he's not quite the leading scorer. But if he hit one more three-pointer, if rather than hitting 26%, he was hitting like 28% of his three-pointers, he would be the leading scorer on the team. And right. We know he's going to, he's going to have games where he just takes over offensively once he gets 100% there. Hey, I want to talk about Luke Kennard for a moment because Jeff Goodman at ESPN. Jeff Goodman wrote an article that, and in the article he reminds us that at this time last year, through the first 5 games of his career, Luke Kennard was just 2 of 17 from three-point range, just 2 of 17. And remember how much he struggled with his shot the first half of last season, and then he's just started coming on strong. And those struggles seem like such a distant memory at this point because he's hitting almost half his three-pointers so far this year and playing great ball. But one of the other things that Goodman pointed out that I think is really interesting, coming into this season, during the preseason, when Tatum was still healthy, Duke's starting backcourt, Duke's starting lineup did not include Luke Kennard. It was going to be Grayson Allen, Matt Jones, and Jason Tatum in the backcourt with Bolden and Jefferson up front. And Kennard was going to sort of battle with Frank Jackson to be the first guy off the bench. They were going to come in off the bench. Well, so the injury to Jason Tatum has really given Luke Kennard a chance to become a star. And it's hard to imagine, I'm not saying he's going to be the starter once Tatum comes back, because Tatum is a truly, truly special talent. But I think Luke Kennard's going to get plenty of minutes, plenty of time, even once those vaunted freshmen are available and in the lineup. And again, I go back to what I've said a couple times already. The idea that we're adding 3 really, really good players to what we already have. The notion that rather than having to play 38, 39, 40 minutes, the guys who are battling out there right now are going to be able to play comfortably 32 or 33 or maybe even a little bit less because we're just going to come at people in waves. Goodness gracious. Can I
pose a question to you along your discussion about Luke Kennard? So far this season, Kennard's averaging 35 minutes a game, Allen's averaging 33, and Matt Jones is averaging 35. Let's say when everybody's healthy, particularly Tatum, because he overlaps with those guys on where they're going to be standing on the court and what their jobs are. How much of each of those guys' minutes do you think is going to get eaten into? Because I think before the season, you might have said, like you said, Kennard is going to be battling with Jackson to be the guy off the bench. I don't know that Matt Jones has shown so far that that he's contributing as much as Kennard is contributing. And granted, they have different skill sets and they're doing different things. But I might even think that Matt Jones is going to lose more playing time than Kennard is. What do you guys think about that?
I agree with that.
I think that Matt Jones is going to lose minutes, but I think all of them are going to lose minutes. Minutes are just going to be harder to come by. Yeah,
I was just going to say, I think Matt Jones gets the bulk of the hit, but I don't know if it's going to be in the starting lineup. I think he starts. I think he plays the 2 and 3 more than he does the 3 and 4, which is what he's been kind of playing these first couple weeks. I think Tatum moves into the 3 to 4 role. He kind of merges those guys until Bolden and Giles are able to work their way into the rotation. But I think Luke Kennard may have earned his way to staying on the court as a starter, at least to start. At least when they get back. It's hard to tell. I don't know if he gets a lot of his minutes eaten up because he's been playing really well. And as you guys know, it's very hard to keep somebody off the court that's been playing as well as he's been playing the first couple of weeks of the season. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I
I want to.
I was going to say just that Jones. You said, Donald, you think he might keep starting. I think that's probably right, but that I wouldn't be surprised if by the time conference season rolls around and if everybody's healthy, that Jones is starting games and playing under 20 minutes. Because I'm not seeing so far what he. I think that supposedly his calling card is the defense, and I don't think we've seen enough of it this year to justify the drop off for what he provides on offense.
All right, so I'm going to defend Matt Jones for a moment.
Go for it.
So the best player on Rhode Island is E.C. Matthews. He's averaging 19.5 points a game thus far this season. He's a guy who's averaged in the mid to upper teens every single year of his career. He's the favorite to be the Atlantic 10 Player of the Year. I'm not sure if you noticed what he did against Duke today. Basically had a pretty negligible impact on the game. That was Matt Jones. Matt Jones was guarding E.C. Matthews. Matt Jones takes the toughest defensive assignment every single game for Duke. And as I cited earlier, 50% of the game is played on the other end of the floor. 50% of the game is defense. And Matt Jones is a great, great defender. I also think on a team where it seems like we really haven't figured out who the point guard is, even though I thought in the preseason we were going to see a lot more of Grayson Allen at point, because I thought that part of why he came back this year was to hone up on those point guard skills, because that's where his future probably is in the NBA. More often than not, we've seen Matt Jones playing point. Not that there aren't positions and blah 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 blah. Yeah,
or Frank Jackson.
But I don't know. I don't know that Matt Jones's minutes are going to suddenly be cut in half, which is what you guys are sort of talking about. But that said, the minutes have to come from somewhere, and I guess the big question about minutes is: are we talking about a really close, really tight game against a really good opponent, where Coach K has shortened the rotation as he's probably going to, or are we talking about regular games? Because I think, quote unquote, regular games, most of the game once we hit January. And Duke is presumably healthy. Fingers crossed, they'll be fully healthy by January. Our quote unquote regular games are going to be games where we're coasting. We're going to be housing teams by 20 plus points, and so minutes aren't going to be that big a deal.
Sure, but against the UNCs and Louisville, I'm talking about the tight game. I'm really curious
I think you're probably right.
How those play out because the guys like we said, Kennard and Jackson were probably the biggest question marks coming into the season as far as projecting minutes played. They've both had to play huge roles here early, and they both, I think, Jackson I don't think has shot quite as well as he might be capable of.
Dude, he shot really well. Have you looked at his stats?
No,
Frank Jackson is hitting 40.
I'm doing this from memory.
So get this. Frank Jackson's hitting 47% of his threes, 82% of his free throws, and 50% field goals overall.
So there
He's
you go.
Shooting pretty darn well.
Frank Jackson. But then it only augments the point that both Kennard and Jackson have played about as well as you could have possibly imagined for the guys who were stepping in and didn't have clear roles coming into the season. And so what do you do with the guys who have probably been the two best players in the team next to Emil Jefferson? So I don't know. That's what we have Coach K for.
Yeah, I would not be surprised that when we play a UNC or a Louisville or maybe Virginia, and we should probably mention that Virginia lost Austin Nichols, and that's a really big deal, and huge respect for Tony Bennett. Ooh, wait, that's going to be my parting shot. We'll get to that in a second. So anyway, but when Duke plays those really, really big games, and I suspect, Grayson Allen will play 35-plus minutes in those games. Emil Jefferson will play 35-plus minutes. Jason Tatum's going to play 30 to 35 minutes. Harry Giles is going to play 30 to 35 minutes. That's not going to leave a lot of minutes. And I think Luke Kennard, Frank Jackson, Matt Jones, and Marcus Bolden are going to have to divide up the other 55, 60 minutes among the four of them. And that's That's just the way it's going to be. It's going to mean that we're going to have plenty of depth.
I'm not quite as confident that Giles is going to get to play 30 minutes just because he's coming back from injuries, and freshman big men just don't play that much, even when they're really good. But your point still stands that Jefferson and Allen, in particular, and Tatum are all going to be playing 30 to 35 minutes a game. So you're right. Yeah. It's not clear where the rest of it's going to get spread around.
No one knows what he'll be. He hasn't played in a while. If Harry Giles is healthy, if Harry Giles is the player he was in high school, Harry Giles will play 30, 35 minutes a game. He's that good.
We shall see.
Yeah. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Let's get into recruiting. And as you guys know, last week, Gary Trent Jr. Declared that he was going to come to Duke next year. And the other jewel of this year's class is going to make his declarations known this Wednesday, I believe. Wendell Carter is down to Duke or Harvard as to where he will play basketball next year. A lot of people are saying it's going to be Duke, but you know what? I think it's kind of cool that it's down to Duke and Harvard. It's down to, in our eyes, the best basketball program in the country, and Harvard, which is one of the best academic, if not arguably the best academic institution in the country. That's not something that you see or hear about in college basketball a lot, somebody making their choice between a major powerhouse program and a major academic Ivy League institution. Let me get your quick thoughts, guys. I mean, we don't have enough to discuss. I mean, he's going to make his announcement on Wednesday is the expected announcement. But Jason, what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, technically, he says that Georgia and Georgia Tech are still in the running, but everyone is saying that it's Duke or Harvard. And usually when, everyone's sort of saying it's Duke. Everyone's saying he's going to pick Duke, but that Harvard maybe has a chance here. His parents supposedly really, really loved Harvard. And believe in what's going on at the program. I should mention, by the way, that Wendell plays at Pace Academy, which is like 2 miles from my house. I know a lot of kids that go there. In fact, one of Wendell's teammates is one of my son's best friends, and we go. I've seen Wendell play a few times, and he's a very sweet kid. He's a great player. I ordinarily would be, absolutely 110% pulling for Duke and would be really, really upset if we lost this recruiting battle. I mean, look, when we're going head-to-head against a Kansas or a Kentucky or Arizona or whoever else it may be, you're always like, we can't, I want this guy to get away. I don't want to say I wouldn't mind, but if he goes to Harvard, it's kind of cool. It'd be kind of cool. I mean...
think about how many Harvard games do you think would end up on ESPN, ESPN2, or ESPNU next season if Wendell Carter's there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, They play it, because of the academics, Harvard plays at weird times. Like Harvard doesn't play weekday games. They only play like Friday, Saturday, Friday, Sunday kind of stuff because they don't want to interfere with kids' studies and such. But
they're going to, ESPN is going to have to put him on TV all the time, right? Because he's going to be one of the very best players in the class and is probably going to be one of the highest picks in the 2018 draft, right?
Yeah. So while we're sitting here saying, how cool it would be if he went to Harvard and that he's this into academics, and that's great. It's fabulous. We are talking about a guy who's going to be in school for 1 year. Wendell Carter is going to be a top draft pick, not this coming summer, but the following summer. And he's a one and done. Of course he's a one and done. He's like the number 2 or 3 player in the class. At one time he was the number 1 player in the class. So are we really obsessing over the fact that he might, academically pick an amazing institution like Harvard? It sort of seems silly. And I think that's why, in the end, he picks Duke. I think if this was a different era, and if he was going to get a degree from somewhere and really be a part of the campus for 4 years, that Harvard would have a better chance. But like for 1 year, it's like almost like what's the point? But it's kind of cool that it's even possible.
I think it's still cool though, because if you think about it, just like you said, he could have gone he could have picked one of these basketball factories where he knows he has to just major in being an NBA player. Like he could do that. He could have done the Bill Simmons treatment where he went to LSU and like there's talk about how he just like he's on his track and everybody else is on theirs. I mean, he could have done a lot of things, but he's basically down to, I mean, when you even say Georgia Tech, that's a great institution as well. So we're talking about 3 of his final 4 teams are schools that are known for academics, and that is there's something to be said about that. I think that's cool no matter how long he's been.
Yeah. Although only one of them is known for academics and being one of the best basketball programs ever. And that's why he's going to pick Duke.
And I hope he does that on Wednesday. Sam, did you have anything on it?
Nope, I think you guys covered it all. I hope he comes to Duke, and if he goes to Harvard, I frankly won't care.
Go, Tommy. Go, Tommy.
Yeah, sure. Great. Fine. There are too many Duke guys in the greater basketball diaspora for me to root for all of them.
Well, I guess we should probably talk about that other game that happened yesterday on the gridiron. Duke football went up to Pitt and lost 56-14. So, Jason, I'm going to pose this question to you because I think you will be able to answer, or maybe you won't. Last week, we talked about how this team is steadily improving, how they have taken what they've learned from the previous weeks and put it together, and they're always fighting, they're always in it to the end. How do we explain 56-14 after all we talked to the world about last week?
I don't know. It's crazy. I don't know how that game happened. I mean, this is the same Duke team that only lost to Louisville 24-14. They were close to. I mean, Virginia Tech, who's a top 20 team, 24-21. They just beat top 25 team UNC 28-27, and then 56-17. Ooh. And Pitt basically did whatever they wanted. And I'm sorry, 56-14. And like I said, Pitt did whatever they wanted, and the 14 wasn't even real because one of them was a defensive touchdown. It was like suddenly we couldn't do anything, and it kind of felt like we gave up a little bit. Did you just hear Cameron? Cameron's barking in the background. He didn't like it either. Yeah, Cameron didn't like it either. I mean, it felt like Pitt was able to do whatever they wanted all game long. And the game was it was over midway through the third quarter. I mean,
this was according to the News and Observer, this was Duke's worst loss since they hosted Alabama in Wallace Wade Stadium in 2010. So, just to give some perspective,
I was there for that game.
I mean,
that game felt closer than this one did. I'll tell you that.
I mean, we should note Pitt is playing really, really good football right now. I mean, they're 7-4, and anyone, whoever they play in their bowl game, I feel sorry for them. They play Syracuse next week. They're gonna beat Syracuse. Syracuse is not good. So they're going to be 8-4, and I mean, I don't know. I haven't really looked to see what bowl they might go to, but Pitt's playing really good football.
I mean, I hate to bring it up in front of Donald's, but Pitt has a win over the team that might end up winning the Big Ten this year in Penn State. So, they're a strong team.
Yeah.
And get out of here.
I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to crush you ahead of the game.
Penn State, get out of here. Yeah, we're 4-7. We got Miami next week at Miami. If we win that, we're 5-7. I think technically we could still be eligible to be selected for a bowl game, but I doubt we will.
Correct.
I mean, we get in under the APR.
No.
But I don't think we
would absolutely. Hold it. We would absolutely. If we are 5-7, and if they have to, the way the 5-7 teams get picked is it goes in order of your APR, your academic progress rate, and Duke is number 1 in the nation in APR. We've been number 1 in the nation in APR for like 8 years running, or something absurd like that.
So if we beat Donald's Hurricanes this Saturday, then Duke is going to a bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, there has to
be an eligible spot.
There's still a
guarantee is getting in.
There's still a mathematical scenario where we wouldn't, but it would take, I think, something like 13 or 14 5-win teams all winning their games this coming week, which is pretty
I think
unlikely.
a few of them, I think, play each other, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the estimates at this point are that they're probably going to be maybe 2, maybe 3, 5 and 7 teams that qualify for bowls. Now, I'll put the question to you guys. There are teams out there that go 5 and 7, qualify for a bowl, and then say, no, we 5 and 7, we just can't do it, and elect not to play. I don't think. Coach Cutt has said many times.
Coach Cutt loved the extra practice time.
Yeah, that extra practice is pretty darn useful.
And honestly, way our program's at, we're not the Michigans, Alabamas, Ohio States of the world where we can turn down these bowl games because they're beneath us or anything like that. Any bowl game to us is a great bowl game. It's like you guys said, it's a chance for extra practice, a chance for extra reps, and to get a head start on next year. I don't care where it is. That if it's a bowl game, I think we'll most likely take it, and I think we should. Well, and if they do make it, it's not like the team isn't aware that they made it in on the fact on the academic progress. So it's an opportunity to stress to the guys that, hey, the academics are still important here. That's what got us here, and also that on the field you guys didn't entirely deserve it. So work your butts off, and next year you'll earn it again for real. I think it's a perfect motivator.
I like it.
So
yeah,
we'll see what happens against Miami.
Obviously, yeah, I was going to say what comes first is Miami, and that's not going to be easy. This Miami team, by the way, beat Pitt a few weeks ago.
Right, but
in fact,
we beat UNC.
They beat the snot out of Pitt. They beat Pitt 51-28.
Eesh.
So, but they lost to UNC, and they got killed by Virginia Tech. And they lost to Notre Dame, so you can't make it. None of this makes sense.
Welcome to the Coastal Division. It's been like this for years.
So now let's move on to Players of the Week, and I will start with you, Jason. Give me your Player of the Week.
Well, I hope that someone takes Emil Jefferson, but I'm taking Luke Kennard. Huge week for Luke Kennard with his backcourt running mate Grayson Allen really struggling, hurt, banged up, and not able to produce, especially from the perimeter the way he ordinarily does. Kennard gets 22 points against Kansas. He then, against Penn State, comes out and only gets 15 points. Oh, that was his worst game. And then against Rhode Island, there were times during the second half where he absolutely took over the game. He scores 24 points against Rhode Island. He shot great from deep. He was. It's so much fun to watch Luke Kennard because he's left-handed, but he's equally adept with his right or his left hand. And his ability to get close to the basket and then finish with either hand is just sublime. It's gorgeous to watch. Kennard was great this week. And this Rhode Island game, 24 points on 8 of 11 shooting, 24 points on 11 shots. That's absurd. He also had 7 rebounds. He played a really, really great game. He played all 40 minutes because, the entire team is on the bench injured. So as great as Emil Jefferson was, and God, was Emil Jefferson great this week, my Player of the Week goes to Luke Kennard. Sam?
So if Donald had started with me, I would have said, I'm about to take Emil Jefferson, and I really hope that somebody else takes Luke Kennard. So thank you, Jason, for reading my mind. Emil Jefferson didn't have a great game against Kansas, but over the weekend at Mohegan Sun, he went 18 for 28 against Penn State and Rhode Island, 2 teams. Rhode Island is a team that's definitely making the tournament. Penn State, you could certainly see them getting better and being good enough to challenge for a tournament spot. He also pulled down 15 rebounds against both of those teams, which I think we already highlighted. Just in general, looked like a force at both ends of the court. Made a few of those nifty Emil Jefferson moves to the basket where he's like at the free throw line, and then all of a sudden he like fakes left and goes right, and he lays it in easily. Played a lot of good defense against both of those teams, and I think just overall has been the consummate captain of this team. As the senior leader, as the graduate student among them. Emil Jefferson seems to have the pulse on everybody, and you can see the way that he talks to all the different guys on the team and gets them all in the right places. So to him, I would have also so him and Luke Kennard both had great weeks. Frank Jackson also had a great week, and as I pointed out, has really come on strong. We sometimes take for granted, as I said, that the star freshmen are actually going to be stars early, and so far Frank Jackson has lived up to the billing that he had coming out of high school.
Yeah, so if I wasn't hosting this week, I would have said exactly what Jason said, that I hope somebody would take Emil Jefferson because I'm going with Luke Kennard as well. I think that he is making the most of his opportunities, and he's lighting up the scoreboard in every single way, from three, inside, layups. He's doing it all, and I think that is really good for us going forward. I think it's going to be helpful to have a lot of scoring come from different places on different nights, and I think Luke Kennard has proven that on any given night he can drop 20 on you, and that's a good sign for the rest of the season. But I think for this week, it's hard. As much as I think Emil had a great weekend in Connecticut, I'm going to go with Luke Kennard for his play over the entire week, and I think that would. Yeah, I'm going to go with Luke Kennard. That's my man.
By the way, I'm now 2 for 2. 2 player of the week. They've both been Luke Kennard. I am the biggest Luke Kennard fan in the world.
You can have that title. I'm sure he's happy to have you in his camp.
All right, let's move to parting shots. And Sam, I will start with you.
Okay, so one of my friends, Jordan, who I'm actually staying with today up here in the mountains, sent me this article from the New York Post about Marshall Plumlee's NBA debut. Did you guys see this? It was extremely funny. So Marshall Plumlee was playing in the D League for the Knicks affiliate in Westchester County, which is not far from New York City, but is up in the suburbs, and is not exactly convenient to Madison Square Garden. He found out on I think it was on Saturday morning or Sunday morning that he was going to have to make his NBA debut because Joakim Noah was hurt. And you can find this New York Post article detailing the whole thing about how he had to get on the commuter train from Westchester to get downtown to Grand Central, and then from Grand Central he had to take a cab over to the stadium, and he had very little time, and there was traffic, so he had to get from Grand Central over to Madison Square Garden. He got out of the cab because there was too much traffic, and he ran down the streets of Manhattan to get to Madison Square Garden to get there in time to play in the game. And then he played 5 minutes in the game and had to go up against Dwight Howard very briefly because they were playing the Atlanta Hawks. So the money quote that I wanted to pull out of the article, he after they explained all the mess that he had gone through to get there, he says about his NBA debut, "I don't think it could have gone smoother, except today. It could have gone smoother."
Yo, I have made that sprint from Grand Central to the Madison Square Garden area, Penn Plaza area to catch a bus or catch a train. So I feel his pain, and the fact that he even played basketball after that, Marshall, that's what's up.
He said before the game started, and the coach said, "Do you need to warm up?" And he said, "I'm already warm. I ran here." So, that's pretty good. I don't know if I haven't been on the boards today. I don't know if this article got posted on the boards anywhere, but I'll make sure to link it in our post about this podcast.
That's incredible. Jason, your party chat.
I alluded to this a little while ago. My parting shot is a tip of the cap to Tony Bennett of Virginia, the head coach of the Virginia Cavaliers, who, and we don't know all the details of exactly what happened or why, but he dismissed Austin Nichols from his team. Austin Nichols had played at Memphis, transferred to Virginia, is a big deal transfer. Austin Nichols got suspended earlier this season for the season opener for violating some team rules. And and apparently he didn't learn his lesson because Tony Bennett said, quote, "It's a privilege to be a part of this program, and Austin has lost that privilege. We have standards for our student athletes, and when those standards are not met, there are consequences." And Austin Nichols now understands. I'm sorry?
I was going to say, that's a kid that Duke recruited when he was transferring, right? I mean, Coach K wanted Austin Nichols to come to Duke when he left Memphis.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. And I mean, Austin Nichols is a heck of a player. A lot of people thought that he was going to be one of the top big men, top forwards in the country this year. And Tony Bennett said, no, you broke some rule, you did something wrong. Seth Greenberg, who is not someone that I'm now going to quote from both Dick Vitale and Seth Greenberg in the same podcast. And be careful, if I go silent, it's because my body has turned to stone as a result of doing this. But Seth Greenberg,
we might not invite you back.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to really prepare myself for this. Seth Greenberg said something intelligent. Oh God. Seth Greenberg said that typically when a kid gets in trouble, as Austin Nichols did earlier this year, that when a coach lets him back on the team, that there's a contract. And that the coach says, here are the things you must do, here are the things you must not do. But the coaches typically spell things out very, very clearly. And let's not forget, Seth Greenberg was a coach. And at Virginia Tech, he had more than a few kids that he suspended or who got in trouble. So he knows a lot about this. Seth Greenberg said, those contracts are in the coaching fraternity, in the coaching world, are sacred. And they're a big deal. And he said, it's clear Tony Bennett probably had a contract with Austin Nichols, and Austin Nichols violated it. And Seth said, when you do that, it's done. You're finished. So my parting shot is a tip of the hat to Tony Bennett, because this isn't easy for him. Virginia will probably not be as good because they don't have Austin Nichols. At least that would be the conventional wisdom. I should point out that today Virginia went out without Austin Nichols and played Yale. And as Duke fans know, Yale's not a bad team. They're not great, but they're not bad. Virginia only beat Yale 62-38. 62-38. Virginia is, again, an incredible defensive team. They played St. Francis the other day. St. Francis scored 32 points against them. That's not in a half. That's in the whole game. They played UNC Greensboro. They scored 51 points. So far on the season, the most anyone scored against Virginia is 51 points. Teams are basically averaging 40 points a game against Virginia so far this season. Beware the Cavaliers. Donald?
So my parting shot is one about us. 2 years ago this week, do you guys know what we did 2 years ago this week?
You gave it away. You told us beforehand.
We talked on the phone for the first time?
We talked on the phone for the first time, and we recorded episode 0, not episode 1. Episode 1 was, the one that we started off and had up after we, I guess, got official permission to be the DBR podcast. But, 2 years ago this week, in 2014, Thanksgiving weekend, we got on the phone for the first time and started doing this venture project. And 62 episodes later, we're still here. So that's a tribute to our fans out there, the 3 dozen of you who tune in every single time we post something, but also to us, the fact that 2 years later we haven't killed each other over the phone with some of these things. But to you guys and to everybody out there, thank you for keeping us on for 2 years. It's been a fun project, and it's good. We've had some great basketball and great football to talk about over these 2 years, and we have no intentions of stopping people. So hopefully you like our voices. You clearly do, because you've let us go on for this long.
Yeah, and by the way, it's worth noting, I think the reason we haven't ever killed each other is because we've never, the three of us, been in the same place at the same time. I've met Donald, and I've met Sam, and Sam's met Donald, but we've never, the three of us, been together at the same time. As soon as that happens, I plan to kill both of you. So,
well,
I guess that really changes things.
Meeting this. Yeah.
I always say that it'd be fun for us all to do an episode together, but now I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Hey, and Donald, because you said thanks to the fans, I wanted to point out we're coming up to Thanksgiving, and I wanted to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank the DBR for letting us use their name.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And my last thanks as we come into Thanksgiving is I want to thank my wife and sons for tolerating this. They roll their eyes at me every week when I go, I've got to do a podcast. They're like, are you really wasting your time with that? And I try to explain to them that we have literally dozens of people listening. Actually, we joke about that. The listener numbers are kind of scary. The number of people who
they really are.
Listen to it's like thousands of people, which is kind of crazy. But I want to thank my family for tolerating the preparation, the recording, and the editing that goes into each and every one of these. And I want to thank both of you for being my partners in crime. Thanks, guys.
I would add to that I would like to thank my roommate who often is around when I record, and he sometimes sits and listens to me, even though he's not a Duke fan, because he's fascinated by what we're doing. And then also thank my friend Jordan, who's hosting me for the podcast tonight. He's doing a great job.
So I guess that's going to do it for this episode of the DBR podcast. Like you guys said, happy Thanksgiving. We're going to take next week off to be with our families. I know you guys are going to do the same, and really you're probably not going to be expecting to hear from us for a couple weeks. We'll come back probably after the Michigan State game so we can all stuff ourselves full of Thanksgiving deliciousness food and watch all the games that are going to be on. So for that, for Sam, for Jason, I'm Donald. Check us out on the DBR forums, and Duke Band, take us home.